Chapter 9. Rats! Ling did as Johnny suggested about the desert rats in the city. They soon heard rumors going around that the rats had figured out how to get past the wards in the king's castle. King Richard and his staff were beside themselves trying to deal with the tenacious pests. Over the next few weeks, Ling began using the rats as spies, since she couldn't see past the protective wards on the castle grounds. Richard had a warrant out for Johnny's arrest, in spite of the ruse of Ben as a human messenger. So Johnny stayed in the deep desert with his clan for a while longer, helping them pack up and move when it was time to go to another camp. It was just as well. Morning sickness was a bitch to deal with. He didn't think he could manage running cargo with irregular attacks of vomiting. Johnny, embarrassed by the symptoms, tried to hide it by sleeping in a sand ship where a bathroom was always close by. He knew how to deal with it non-magically, eating crackers or slices of bread. But Goldie, concerned for her friend after the first week, ratted him out to Ling. She had come one early morning and asked to be let in. The little girl opened the door for her, looking worried. "You should not have kept this from me!" Ling yelled through the bathroom door as Johnny retched loudly. "I have a charm that will help you. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Morning sickness is perfectly normal." "Mom!" Johnny complained. Then just when he thought he was finished, he suffered another bout. Dry heaves this time. "Open the door!" Ling commanded. He finally stopped heaving and did as he was told, quickly as he could. He knew that tone of voice. If he didn't open the door immediately, she might magic her way in explosively, leaving him nothing but fragments instead of a bathroom door. The moment the door was opened, she pounced, grabbing his nightshirt and yanking him down low enough to slip a cast metal feather charm necklace around his neck. Instantly, Johnny felt better, much to his relief. He backed away from his mom a half-step in the teeny bathroom, flushed the toilet, then turned to the sink to rinse his mouth out and brush his teeth. As he dipped his brush in a can of baking soda, he said, "Thanks, Mom. I guess I was being a bit foolish." "I understand. You're embarrassed," Ling shrugged. Wrinkling her nose at the lingering smell of vomit, she made a few gestures. The air freshened at once, and the teeny window in the bathroom opened seemingly of its own accord. "Do you really?" he almost snapped after he spat out the odd-tasting wet powder. "You feel weak, helpless, and out of control of your body," Ling replied sympathetically. "It was hard for me at first, too." Johnny didn't comment at first. His mouth was full of water as he switched it around to rinse it out. He spat, rinsed, spat, took a long, slow drink, testing his stomach's reaction. It stayed quiet as if nothing were wrong. As he did this, he reflected that she did know what she was talking about. She was female. But what he was experiencing was normal for a woman, not a man. He felt like a freak, and he was embarrassed by his condition. He grabbed a hand towel hanging off its rack and dried his mouth and hands. As he hung it up and saw his reflection, the grayish pallor he had the last few mornings had sometimes evenings was gone. He noticed he needed a shave. He pulled open the medicine cabinet and picked out his shaver. He also noticed that the stubble he was getting a bit patchy. Must be the hormones, he thought to himself irritably. Hormones were doing other things to him lately. His moods were more erratic, and he could sometimes go from happy to grouchy in a heartbeat. Before Ling's charm, he could go from nauseated to ravenous at various times of the day, without warning, though most of the time he managed not to vomit. He peed a lot more, too. He thought that was supposed to happen later, but apparently not. That part was really annoying. Before he turned on to his shaver, he closed the medicine cabinet and turned to his mother and said, "I'm a man. I'm not supposed to have to deal with this. I didn't grow up thinking that would be me having a baby. At least you were taught from a very young age about this and other female problems and how to deal with them. My birth mother taught me some of it, so I can help run the family business. I never thought I personally would need the information for myself. This is unfair. It's not natural." To his disgust and surprise, he found himself crying a bit. Gritting his teeth, he tried to calm down. Damned hormones were wreaking havoc on his emotions again. Ling smiled with sympathetic understanding. "I suppose this would be more a shock to you than it would be for a woman." Blinking back tears, he turned back to the mirror and finished shaving. He was not sure how to respond, so he kept quiet. "No more of this foolishness," Ling ordered before she turned to go. "Any more problems, you come talk to me, or Goldie has promised to tattle on you. She cares too much for you to let you go on suffering, you big oaf." "Little girl's worried too. You should think about how they feel." He realized then he had been a bit selfish, now that she had mentioned it, but it was hard to think of anything else, with a constant worry that he might retch for no reason. Even certain odors set his stomach off, like goat for some reason. Something about cooking goat meat made him sick when it used to smell delicious. Well, with the charm Ling gave him, that wouldn't be a problem anymore, which was a relief. "Thanks for the charm," Johnny said to Ling before she was out of sight. He paused in his shaving, turning it off so he could hear her better. Then he asked, trying not to be embarrassed, "You got something for mood swings?" Ling turned back and smiled. "You're wearing it. It'll take a few hours, but you'll start noticing its effects." "Thanks." He smiled with genuine relief. He hated the idea of seeing himself go all weepy for the smallest provocation, then angry and weepy again. He had been doing that for the past week, and he was barely able to hide the emotional roller coaster he was on. Mostly he had a nagging anxiety about the coming months that was always in the background of his thoughts. He couldn't help worrying about being pregnant, and how in creation was he going to manage giving birth? "You're welcome, son." Ling smiled and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. He finished shaving and replaced the shaver back in the cabinet. Then he cursed irritably under his breath and shut the door. He had to pee again. When he came out of the bathroom located behind the cockpit and to the left side of the kitchen, he smelled Ling's cooking and was suddenly ravenous. His bed was straight across from the kitchen area, now folded back into the wall to reveal an imitation leather upholstered bench. A small table had lifted from the floor and floated in front of it. Ling had remembered where he had stowed his footstool and moved it to the empty spot where little girl's crate had been. He had thrown it when he had his guest area converted into a nursery, and then later a private bedroom. He would let her keep it until she outgrew it, but she decided it was a place to pee. Johnny got the idea it was a comment rather than a case of mistaken identity for a litter box. Little girl was very good at getting her point across non-verbally when she wanted to. Little girl was sitting at the table, nude as usual, with Goldie sitting at the table to her right. Ling was digging around the cabinets and refrigerator for various ingredients to what looked like the makings of a fine omelet. She looked at little girl and said, "If you're going to sit there at the table in human form, I'd appreciate if you go get some clothes on, child." Little girl wrinkled her nose, bared her teeth a little, her eyes turning golden and cat-like as she briefly considered returning to her true form, just to be ornery. Ling arched a delicate eyebrow at the young dragon, and little girl blinked, her eyes returning to normal human brown. She hopped and scooted on her butt until she reached the end of the bench before standing and walking back through the narrow doorway that led to her room. Johnny wanted to protest, but he kept his mouth shut. True, little girl had no right to defy her grandmother, but Johnny never made her wear clothes unless they were in a town or city. He was more concerned about her learning to be a dragon than learning to be human. The only reason he wanted her to dress in the city because nudity was not acceptable to most city dwellers. Neither could she take on her true form in the cities. Young dragons were prized by gladiator stable masters when they can get them. When she was a baby, she sometimes forgot to turn into a human, and they would offer to buy her, then leave her be when Johnny refused under no uncertain terms. Other less honest stable masters might arrange for her to be taken, except most of them knew Johnny at least by reputation and wouldn't even dare try. A rare few were stupid enough to try it anyway. One man tried 3 years ago when a little girl forgot to change into her girl form and used the dirt outside the dune lady to pee. Johnny came out just in time to catch the thief trying to lure her away with his half-eaten beef sandwich. The unwashed man saw him and made a grab for the little dragon. Johnny lunged with his sword and managed to cut off the man's left ear. Howling, the man dropped little girl and ran away, hand clutched over the bloody hole that had been his ear. Little girl returned wearing sandals, a flowing black skirt that fell to her ankles, and a lacy long-sleeved red cotton blouse. She cocked an eyebrow as Ling turned to inspect her granddaughter. Ling nodded and pointed with one of Johnny's spatulas he was using to flip the eggs in the cast-iron skillet back at the bench. Briefly casting her eyes down submissively, little girl quietly sat back down and scooted back to her place, not bothering to butt-hop this time because her skin was not sticking to the fox red-brown leather thanks to her skirt. Ling worked quickly and efficiently, making ham and cheese omelets with toast and jam. She was fond of using recipes from different places around the world. She managed to do this by using her contact mirror, translator, and teleportation spells to trade knowledge, barter for things that were difficult, if not impossible, to obtain any other way. Johnny grew up with them, as well as the more traditional home cooking of the Middle East, and had grown fond of the variety. Lucky for him and his family, Ling liked to share what she bartered for, so his refrigerator and cabinets were often stocked with things like sliced bread, jams, peanut butter, ice cream, potatoes, tomatoes, chocolate, bananas, etc. And thanks to Ling, he knew how to prepare the exotic foods. Since little girl was a child, she was served her breakfast first. Ling gave her granddaughter her omelet, toast with strawberry jam, peanut butter, a cup of orange juice, and an extra pair of saucers. Little girl smiled and picked up her fork and knife and began dividing rat-sized portions from her breakfast. Little girl passed the sections of toast and eggs to the rat on one saucer. Then she carefully poured a small portion of juice in the other saucer and passed that to Goldie, who was already picking up a piece of toast and nibbling on it happily. Johnny watched as Ling cooked another omelet with toast. It smelled like heaven, especially the toast she was making in the other small frying pan. He had a toaster somewhere in the pans, but his mother preferred to use the stove top. As she cooked his breakfast, she asked, "What do you plan to do next? The information of the rats are passing to me I can relay to Elena is helpful, but if Richard is to be dethroned, we need to do something more." Ling still didn't like the idea of getting entangled with government affairs, but Johnny was determined to help Elena, so she in turn was doing what she could to help Johnny and to ensure his safety. "I need a charm spell to alter my identity," Johnny said. "I can only do so much through the contact mirrors. I have to be out there running cargo and contacting my allies in person." "You also want to continue stealing for us and the Sisters of Mercy," Ling sniffed, as she added cheese to his cooking eggs and flipped the toast over in the other pan. "I heard what Elena said about you getting involved. You're better off staying out of sight. I wish you were not so determined to help her. You have enough money for now. The Dragon Clans and the Sisters can make do for a while longer." "Sometimes my cargo's runaway slaves, Mom," Johnny reminded her. "The Sisters of Mercy can never get enough supplies, and they don't ask how I get them. Your heart is in the right place, Ling agreed reluctantly. She often helped the slaves Johnny brought to the safety of the dragon clans for processing, which is a sort of orientation period, medical help, and living assistance until they found their footing and were able to care for themselves. Johnny didn't perform the service often. The opportunity came up sporadically at best, but he was very good at it when he did. I still wish he would reconsider. Richard still wants to arrest you for killing his guards. I killed the guards in self-defense, Johnny said. Richard knows me well enough to know that I never kill unless I am forced to. He should have called off the guards and left us alone. I know him well enough to understand that he really doesn't care about them. He's just using their deaths as an excuse to have me arrested. My best guess, he still believes I have something he wants, though I'm not sure why. Lane turned to look at it before turning back to transfer his omelet to his plate. As she removed his toast from the pan and spread peanut butter on them, she asked, "And what of little girl? Is she going to have to be brave again and maybe get hurt, captured, or killed because you insisted on going back to work?" "I can protect her," Johnny said earnestly. "I've been doing fine so far, as people along my traders know better than try to hurt her. The last man tried, lost an ear, and told everybody about it. So they know me believed I have a dragon in my sand ship and assumed he was half lying. The city folk think dragons are too dangerous to keep outside the gladiator stable. No one in the city sees her in her true form anymore, and most people think she's human." "Does Richard know she's a dragon?" Ling asked as she passed him his eggs, toast, and a cup of juice. Johnny had regular drinking glasses at one time, but they had been lost or broken years ago, and he neglected to replace them. He had enough cups anyway. "No," Johnny said as he took a hearty bite of his omelet, finding that it tasted even better than it smelled. He swallowed and said, "I had a bad feeling from the start about that kid. When I rescued Little Girl, I neglected to mention she was on my ship until she could remember to stay in her girl form consistently." "Elena knows," Ling said as she began cooking for herself. "She would know," Johnny agreed. "She adored Little Girl and tried to give her a name. As soon as Little Girl understood what she was trying to do, she howled until Elena relented. No doubt she was curious about her origin and went looking into the past to see where I got her. She never told anyone what she saw, but whenever we came to visit, she always seemed a little sad for the longest time when she looked at my daughter. That was when I got the feeling that she had peaked. She's the best seer that I know, and an honorable one. She keeps what she sees to herself unless she needs to tell. It's like a sort of self-imposed confidentiality pact for seers." "Do you think she could find my name?" The little girl piped up suddenly after swallowing a piece of toast. "My mother might have named me before I was hatched. But one says dragon mothers can smell a male egg from a female egg about a week after they're laid." "What brought that up?" Ling asked curiously as she added chopped ham and cheese to her eggs. "When we found out Daddy was pregnant, I began to think about what it would be like to have my own babies," the little girl said. Then she flicked out a partially shape-shifted tongue to lick off a bit of jam from her cheek. "Use your napkin, not your pointy dragon tongue to wipe your face, dear," Ling admonished mildly. She was worried that she would forget to act human in the wrong company, so while the little girl was in human form, she insisted that the young dragon act human at all times. Sighing, she did as she was told, as she returned her tongue back to full human form so she continued to talk intelligibly. "I asked Bronwyn about what it was like because she had babies before. She made it part of my next lesson." "How are you doing in your language lessons?" Johnny asked. He had heard her talk in Dragonese only a few occasions, and he knew that she could swear fluently, if nothing else. He had caught her doing it more than once to a young dragon 2 years younger than she, making rude humping gestures at her, expressing dominance rather than sexual innuendo, and to get on her nerves, of course. "Better," the little girl said as she stared at her toast. "I don't have to think so hard to remember the words. Some of the words are hard to translate because dragons think so different from humans sometimes. I'd like to test you, but human mouths and larynxes don't do well with dragon speech," Johnny said as he smiled at her. "You've heard me debauch the lullabies more than once." The little girl smiled. "When I sang them for Bronwyn so she would know what I knew, she fell over laughing. She said that she could just make out what you were trying to sing to me, but your pronunciations were horrible. She sang them to me so I could learn to sing them properly." "I could go ask Ellen to find little girl's name," Goldie said as she looked up from lapping at her orange juice. "I know where she is. The wild rats told me. She's in an old abandoned fort that's 100 miles north of here. She's cast spells on it to restore it to its original state. It looks the same as it did from the outside because she hid the changes with illusions and protection spells. So the Black Witch Richard hired wouldn't be able to tell if anyone had been there. That is, if he ever figures out where to look." "Why did he hire a Black Witch anyway?" Johnny asked Link curiously. "They're usually nasty pieces of work. According to you and Elena, this one's not even that powerful besides." "He's the only one who would take the job," Link snorted as she sat down at the table and Johnny scooted over to make room for her. "Richard really has a bad reputation as an employer. Not many decent folk want him on the throne. His supporters are not the best sort of people. They just don't care so long as they continue living on as they were accustomed. These are mostly the lords and ladies of the court who only care about their own selfish interests. The average people who oppose him don't think they can have remove him because he is too well guarded, and they're just not organized enough to do it." "That witch is going to be a problem when I go back to work," Johnny said thoughtfully. "Is there something you can do to keep him from spotting when I go back?" I placed a few extra spells on the feather charm you're wearing, Link said. I knew you would eventually want to go back to work in spite of the danger, so I gave you what you needed to keep you safe. The rats tell me that Black Witch is hardly more than a boy, so killing him is out of the question. There might be a chance for him to redeem himself. Besides, his death will attract unwanted attention to the dragon class from King Richard. What about my name, please? The little girl insisted, annoyed that the conversation had gone off another direction before she was ready to give up on this original dialogue. Dragons were naturally stubborn like that. I will go after breakfast, I promise, Goldie reassured her as she finished her last bit of egg. Your mother may never have gotten the chance to name you. If Elena can't find your name, then what? I don't know, the little girl frowned, looking upset as she stabbed a chunk of egg with her fork. How about Zora? Johnny suggested playfully in an attempt to cheer her up. He knew she did not like his birth mother's name. He was glad she finally figured out where she might find her real name after all this time. She would eventually outgrow her pet name, and it would sound silly to call a full-grown dragon little girl. Daddy! The little girl groaned half seriously. She knew he was only joking. I could give the rats in the king's castle a charm that would mess up the Black Witch's powers for a while, Ling said thoughtfully as she munched on her toast that she had made after she had finished serving Johnny. And he doesn't figure out what's happening, Richard might just fire him. I think Ellen needs a rat of her own, Goldie suggested as she licked orange juice from her mouth. I can ask a few unattached rats to come with me and see if any want her. Then she can have both a reliable messenger and translator at her disposal so she can use the wild rats at the castle as spies too. That's not a bad idea, actually, Ling said with approval. Just make it clear that adopting Elena could be dangerous because of the situation she's in. Can't be much more dangerous than bonding with Johnny, Goldie commented. He's in outer trouble all the time. Hey! Johnny protested. I don't get into that much trouble. Enough that you need me to help you, Goldie insisted, teasing him good-naturedly. Enough, you too, Ling ordered in exasperation. She had heard this playful banter many times before and was tired of it. They shut up and Goldie finished her orange juice. She set about grooming her face afterwards for a few moments before saying, I'm going now. Is there a message you want me to deliver? Johnny smiled and said, Just tell my sister I said if your rat picks her, don't refuse, and tell her I love her. Goldie nodded, then vanished. I hope Elena could find my name, the little girl said as she picked up her cup to drain the last of her juice. Me too, Johnny replied as he gave her a hug across the shoulders. The little girl smiled and leaned over to kiss his cheek before sitting back down to finish the last few bites of her egg on her plate. There's no way I can convince you to stay with us, Ling said to Johnny. You really should consider settling down with someone. It's been 10 years since you had a wife. Eiko has long fancied you, and I wouldn't disapprove of the match if you two hit it off. I also know you like her son, and she's quite fond of you. Johnny dropped in surprise that Ling would even suggest that he court his sister. Odd that he was just thinking about that just 2 weeks ago at the bottom of the pool. His mind did a double take. Eiko still has a crush on me? Yes, even after all these years, Ling confirmed, and I won't tell you any more about it. It would be best to ask Eiko. I'll think about it, Johnny replied, as was all he was willing to say on the matter for the time being. He wasn't sure how to react now. On the one hand, he wanted to go courting again. On the other, as one more complication in his life he wasn't sure he wanted. He did like Eiko. Part of the reason he developed a wanderlust in the first place so he would not be tempted to court Eiko. He thought he was supposed to be your brother, not a suitor. He had no idea that she was still interested in him. Goldie appeared again at the table, looking a little ruffled with a lip-shaped pinkish-brown mark on her head. She looked both annoyed and very pleased with herself. What happened to you? Johnny asked curiously. Elena hugged me and planted a kiss on my head because she was so grateful for my help. Goldie began grooming herself vigorously in an effort to get her fur back in order. Do I have lip stain on my head? She was applying the stuff when I found her. You do, Ling smiled and stood up to get 2 dish rags, and she wet one of them in the sink and helped Goldie to clean up. She came up with a small damp dish rag and began gently scrubbing the rat's head. The rat didn't struggle as most animals did when they were being cleaned. Instead, she tilted her head back so the soapy water wouldn't get in her eyes, remaining still so the process would be easier and faster. Thanks to her getting to know me, she knows the value of a good rat, Goldie continued as Ling went to rinse the rag off. Once the lip stain had been removed so that she could rinse it off the rat's head. She's now getting to know 5 rats that have an interest in her. I have a feeling they'll all pick her. She's nice. Hey, please don't rub so hard. That's better. Thank you. When I told her why we had come, she was beside herself with joy to have some decent spies Richard would never suspect. That's when she picked me up and loved all over me. I wouldn't have minded so much if she hadn't messed up my fur and stained my head when she kissed me. Seldom is a desert rat so appreciated by someone who lives in a city. What about my name? The girl asked insistently. Patience, I'm getting to that part. I didn't forget, love, Goldie said as Ling used a dry dish rag and proceeded to dry her off. Elena says she loves you too, Johnny. She also sends her apologies again for the situation she has forced you into. The nature of the spell she cast on you has left a one-way and loose sporadic empathic connection between her own body and yours that she can't break. She's been suffering from morning sickness for the past few days off and on, though not as bad as you. She's peeked in on you and she knows what you've been going through. She didn't invade your privacy too much, and she never tells anyone what she sees. She's glad Ling managed to get that charm around your neck more for your sake than hers. My name, please, the little girl almost growled with her impatience. That's enough, child, Ling hissed as she put the rags down in the sink and started to pick up the empty plates. Let her finish. Elena gave me a dream charm for you that she has been saving for some time now, Goldie said, turning to Little Girl, as she shifted and kicked out a flat gold-plated oval disc from under her behind. You just hold it and want to know what's recorded in there. Then you'll dream what it has to show you. Elena doesn't understand most of what your mother is saying. She mostly muttered to herself in her own language. But if you really have been doing well in your lessons, you should be able to understand well enough. Whatever's in that charm is bound to be frightening and sad, Goldie continued as Little Girl solemnly took the charm and looked at it. It wasn't a mark on it, just a shiny bit of metal. I know you have a right to see what's in there, but I hate to see you cry. I'll be okay, Little Girl said proudly as she lifted her blouse a bit and stuffed the charm down her skirt into her pouch where she would not lose it. I'm tougher than a lot of people think. I don't doubt that, Goldie said. She had been reluctant to give Little Girl the charm. The rat could smell the sorrow leaking from the metal as a side effect of the spell. When you're ready, Johnny said, let me be with you when you review the recording of Elena's visions. Little Girl just nodded. Ling sat back down at the table after she had finished washing the dishes and putting them away. Then she said to Johnny, so your plan is to go back to work disguised as someone else, so you continue your work and help organize your colleagues against Richard? Do I understand that correctly? That's it, Johnny confirmed. We're going to see what we can do about messing up Richard's supply orders. The castle needs supplies if it's going to run properly, and throwing a monkey wrench into the works is going to make life there less comfortable. It isn't much, but it's a good place to start. I plan to slowly wear him and his people down without getting into direct conflict. That'll be Elena's job. She and her people will be doing the heavy work, while we'll make it easy as possible for them to kick Richard off the throne. I have an idea, Little Girl said to Ling. What, dear? Ling asked. Cockroaches, Little Girl said with a wicked glint in her eye. They can help the rats make life miserable in the castle. In some ways they're worse because they can go places even the rats can't go, and they poop everywhere. You can sneak them inside some of the cargo. Ling smiled. I'll work on that. It's a good idea, child. Johnny said thoughtfully. Come to think of it, we could send a host of different pests that often plague city folk. Noah and I will work on how to sneak them in, Ling agreed. So you're not going to try to stop me? Johnny asked. He knew she wanted him to stay home where it was safe rather than back on the road and running cargo. He would have liked to do just that, but he still clung to the vague hope if he could hurry things along in Elena's favor, she'd take her baby back before he was ready to be born. He was confident that he could protect Little Girl and Goldie on his mission. No, Ling sighed. You're a grown man when you are determined to do something. There's no convincing you otherwise. Mom, if I didn't think I could do this, I would stay here, Johnny reassured her. That's the other reason why I don't try to stop you, Ling said. I have a lot of faith in you. Johnny smiled, glad he was not going to get any argument out of his mother.